Welcome back to the deep dive. I hope you're settled in.
Oh, yeah. Get comfortable.
Yeah, maybe you've got a warm drink, maybe the lights are dimmed low,
Okay.
or maybe you're tucked under a blanket.
That sounds ideal, honestly.
Right. Because we were going for a very specific vibe today. We're getting into material that demands a certain level of, let's call it open-minded relaxation.
Open-minded relaxation. I like that.
We're going to be chilling, but we're also going to be stretching our brains in ways that might feel a little unusual.
And that is perfectly put, because if you're too rigid with this stuff, if you come in with your arms crossed and your brow furrowed, it just bounces right off you.
Exactly. You have to be porous.
You really do. You have to be willing to play with these ideas.
And speaking of playing with ideas, today we are looking at the early sessions book 7 of the Seth Material.
Such a good one.
It is. Specifically, we are zooming in on a very precise chunk of time here, sessions 281 through 333.
Which is a fascinating era.
So to give you a temporal anchor, we are talking about August 1966 to April 1967.
Right.
So I want you to picture Elmira, New York, mid-60s.
It's such an interesting window of time, you know? You have the counterculture exploding on the coasts.
Oh yeah, the summer of love is right around the corner.
Exactly. But here in Elmira, in this quiet, somewhat cluttered living room, you have Jane Roberts and her husband, Rob Butts.
Just a normal couple.
Right. And they are conducting what might be the most rigorous and, frankly, most entertaining investigation into consciousness of the 20th century.
Absolutely. And for anyone who might be slightly newer to this, okay, let's unpack this setup quickly because it is very unique.
It definitely takes a second to wrap your head around.
We are exploring channeled information. So Jane Roberts goes into a trance state.
Her voice completely changes.
Yeah, her voice changes, her mannerisms change. She sometimes tosses her glasses onto the table.
I love that detail.
And she speaks as an energy personality essence who calls himself Seth.
Right. And crucially, you have Rob Butts sitting right there with her.
He's the unsung hero of all this.
He really is. He's not just a passive observer. He isn't just sitting there in awe of the cosmos. He is taking shorthand notes at a furious pace.
Every single word.
Every word. He's the scribe, but he's also the skeptic. He's the scientist and the interrogator in the room.
Yeah, he's the guy trying to make sense of the fact that his wife is speaking in a voice that definitely isn't hers.
And giving information she definitely shouldn't know.
That dynamic is what makes this specific book, Book 7, so incredible. It feels like they're really hitting their stride here.
They've found their rhythm.
Yeah, it's high metaphysics, sure, but it's happening in a living room with cats wandering around.
The phone is ringing.
Neighbors are knocking on the door. It's just very grounded.
Grounded is the operative word. It's high-altitude philosophy, but with very grounded domestic applications.
We aren't just talking about the cosmos out there.
No, we are talking about why your nose runs and why your neighbor is annoying you.
Which we will absolutely get into. But before we dive all the way in, I have to get the official business out of the way.
Yes, the disclaimer.
Yes, and this is important. This podcast will be distributed free of charge on all major platforms for educational purposes.
We are here to explore the ideas.
Right, to challenge our own thinking and see what we can learn. We aren't selling you a course on levitation.
Though, I mean, if we could levitate, that would be pretty cool.
I'd sign up for that. But no, our mission today is pretty specific. We aren't just browsing through these sessions. We are looking for the mechanics.
The how and the why.
Exactly. We want to know how thoughts actually create reality. Not just as some catchy slogan on a bumper sticker, but the physics of it.
The nuts and bolts.
So we're going to look at these envelope experiments that Rob was so obsessed with.
Oh, I love the envelopes.
And we're going to find out why a runny nose might actually be a misplaced symbol of masculinity.
That part is just, it's brilliant.
I was reading the notes on that one, and I actually laughed out loud in my kitchen. I cannot wait to get to the hay fever saga.
Poor Rob.
But let's start with the envelopes, because this is where the scientist part of Rob Butts really shines through. He isn't just taking Seth's word for it.
No, he really isn't. And that's so important for you as a listener to understand. Rob wants proof.
He needs it.
He loves Jane, obviously, and he trusts Jane. But he needs to know that Seth isn't just Jane's subconscious playing tricks on him.
Right. He needs objective validation.
So he devises these tests, and they are just wonderfully low-tech.
It's the best part.
It's not a sterile lab at a university with men in white coats. It's Rob with some Bristol boards, some masking tape, and double envelopes.
I just love the image of this. It's late at night in Elmira. Rob is there with scissors and tape at the dining table.
Getting his arts and crafts on.
Right. He takes an item, maybe a drawing, a letter, just a random object.
Yeah.
He seals it between cardboard so you can't feel the shape of it.
It's a roulette touch.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Puts that in an envelope, seals that in another envelope, and then asks Seth, via Jane, hey, what's inside?
It's a classic clairvoyance test. Really standard parapsychology stuff for the era.
Standard setup, yeah.
But what makes Book 7 stand out, particularly around session 281, is that the results aren't what you expect from a simple X-ray vision model.
That's the kicker.
Because if you think clairvoyance is just seeing through paper, like Superman, you're missing the entire point. Seth isn't looking at the object with eyes.
Right, so let's look at session 281. This is August 29, 1966. Rob uses a poem as the target object.
Okay.
And it's a poem Jane wrote to him. Now, logically, if Seth is just reading Jane's mind, or if he's reading the paper itself, he should just recite the poem, right?
Or at least describe the handwriting or the shape of the stanzas.
You would think so, but that is not what happens. To understand the hit here, you have to understand the context of the poem.
And this is where the gossip aspect of the Seth Material comes in, which I absolutely love.
It's so relatable.
Yeah.
So Jane wrote this on July 3rd. She was sitting in their backyard, and she was, well, let's say she was stewing.
Oh, she was deeply annoyed.
I love the domestic drama here. It makes them feel so real. So Jane is in the yard, trying to relax, and her neighbors, a couple named Barbara and Dick, are there.
Right.
And they offer Jane a drink. A gin and tonic, I think it was.
No, it was. But Jane feels like it's a completely fake offer. You know that feeling.
When someone offers you something, but their body language is screaming, please say no.
Oh, absolutely. The polite offer.
Exactly. Jane picked up on this huge vibe of insincerity. She called it a winkin' gin.
Which is a fantastic phrase, by the way. I need to start using that.
Winkin' gin. And more than that, she felt Dick, the neighbor, was angry. He was agitated about something.
Right. He was stirred up about something involving Barbara. There was this palpable tension in the air.
So Jane is sitting there, politely declining the drink, or maybe accepting it awkwardly, but internally she is furious.
She's absorbing all that weird neighbor energy.
And she's writing this poem to Rob about how annoyed she is. She is pouring that intense frustration right into the ink. So Rob takes that poem, seals it in the double envelope weeks later. Seth comes through in the session. And does he read the poem? No. He says the word stirrup.
Stirrup. S-T-I-R-U-P.
And then he corrects himself right away.
Right. He says something stirred up.
He's getting the drink being stirred. And the neighbor being stirred up.
Precisely. And this is the critical insight for anyone trying to understand how telepathy or clairvoyance actually works in the Seth model.
It shifts the whole paradigm.
It does. Seth explains that he isn't reading the text like a flatbed scanner. He isn't looking at the letters S-T-I-R. He is reading the emotional charge attached to the object.
So the ink on the paper isn't just ink. It's almost like a magnetic tape recording of the emotion Jane felt when she was holding the pen.
That is a brilliant analogy. Seth calls it the electromagnetic reality of the object.
Electromagnetic reality.
He says that intense emotion, like Jane's annoyance, the awkwardness of the whole winkin' gin situation, it creates a reality that literally clings to the object.
It leaves a residue.
Seth says telepathy isn't reading words, it's reading emotional charges.
That just blows my mind, because it implies that everything we touch, everything we write, we are leaving this invisible emotional fingerprint on it.
We are, constantly.
So if I write a grocery list while I'm angry, does that list carry an angry charge?
According to Seth, yes. The intensity matters, of course. Jane was really annoyed. That emotion was louder than the actual words she wrote.
It's like the volume was turned all the way up on the frustration, but the words were just a whisper.
Exactly. Seth is picking up on the loudest signal in the room, and the loudest signal was the emotional vibe of that afternoon in the backyard.
Wow. And there's another example of this in session 288 that really drives this home. This is the Bill Gallagher experiment.
Oh, yes. The Garden of Gethsemane.
And this one, honestly, this one is just funny to me.
It's very dark humor.
It is wild. So Rob puts in an object related to their friend Bill Gallagher. And Seth, in the session, starts talking about the Garden of Gethsemane.
Okay, so pause there. If I'm Rob, I'm sitting there taking notes thinking, what?
Right. Is this a biblical reference? Are we talking about Jesus now? Did I accidentally put a Bible verse in the envelope?
But it wasn't biblical at all. It was a direct hit on a very personal association.
Which Jane didn't know about.
Right. Bill Gallagher, who worked at a newspaper, jokingly called his office the Garden of Gethsemane.
That is such a dark nickname for a workplace. I mean, for those who don't know the Bible perfectly, Gethsemane is where Jesus went to agonize and sweat blood before the crucifixion.
Right.
That is not where you want to go to type up articles about the local bake sale.
It is incredibly dramatic, but think about what that implies about Bill's internal state.
He was miserable.
He felt tortured by his job. He felt a sense of impending doom or intense suffering there, enough to give it that specific nickname.
And that creates a very specific, unique emotional signature.
Yes. And as you mentioned, Jane consciously didn't know that nickname. She wasn't in on the joke.
She had never heard him call it that.
Never. But Seth picked it up immediately. Why? Because of the sheer emotional weight Bill put on that phrase. It wasn't just a witty remark to him. It was a capsule of his entire feeling about his daily work.
It was heavily charged.
Exactly. It's incredible. It really changes how you view psychic phenomena.
It shows that these hits aren't always visual descriptions. They are conceptual. They are deeply emotional.
It's like Seth is tasting the flavor of the person's psyche attached to the object.
Tasting the flavor of the psyche. I like that. And that leads us to a broader point Seth makes throughout Book 7.
About the nature of thought itself.
Right. He says thoughts are not just wisps of nothing inside your skull. We tend to think, oh, it's just a thought, it doesn't matter, it's private, nobody can see it.
And Seth vehemently disagrees with that. He uses a very specific term here, mental enzymes.
Mental enzymes. I highlighted that in my notes, too. It sounds so biological. It sounds active, like something that digests or transforms other things.
It is entirely active. Think about what an enzyme does in the body. It speeds up a chemical reaction, right?
Yeah, it's a catalyst.
Seth is saying that a thought creates a chemical and electromagnetic reaction. It doesn't just sit there inertly. It begins to materialize immediately.
It changes the atmosphere.
It changes the atmosphere, and crucially, it changes your biology.
Which, and here is where it gets really interesting, brings us to the topic of health.
Yes, the psychosomatic connection.
Because if thoughts are actions, and if they have this real electromagnetic reality, then what are they doing to our physical bodies?
This is one of the most practical, mind-bending applications of the material in this specific book.
It's so relevant to everyday life.
Seth dives deep into psychosomatics, but not in the vague, stress causes ulcers way we usually hear about from doctors today. He gets extremely specific. He basically plays doctor.
We have to talk about Rob's hay fever.
Oh, we do.
I feel like this is a masterclass in how our minds completely mess with our bodies.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also just hilarious because Rob is clearly getting called out by his own channeled entity.
He really is. This is back in session 281 again. Poor Rob cannot catch a break.
So let's set the scene for you. It's August in Elmira. Hay fever season is peaking. Rob is suffering.
He is miserable.
He's sneezing, his eyes are watering, his nose is running. He's probably blowing his nose while trying to take these rapid shorthand notes.
Probably smudging the ink.
And he probably expects Seth to be sympathetic, to say, oh, take some vitamin C, or the pollen count is really high today. Maybe stay inside, buddy.
Seth does not let him off that easy.
Yeah.
Seth basically psychoanalyzes the hay fever right out of existence. He completely deconstructs it.
He really does. He tells Rob that the hay fever isn't actually about the pollen. He says the pollen is just the trigger, is not the cause.
Right. The cause is a psychological defense mechanism that he picked up from his father.
This is fascinating to me. Seth explains that Rob's father used hay fever as a tool, a conscious or subconscious tool.
A manipulation tactic, really.
Yeah, he used it to get attention from Rob's mother, to get sympathy. Poor dear, he's sneezing, bring him soup. But also, and this is the funny part, he used it to avoid farm work.
Which is brilliant in a very dysfunctional way. Sorry, can't plow the field today, I'm sneezing, the pollen is killing me.
Exactly. It was a shield. A way to get sympathy and isolation when things got tough. I need to go lie down in a dark room.
And Rob, as an impressionable child, saw this playing out.
He internalized it.
He identified with his father. He subconsciously reasoned, I am my father's son. To be like him, to be a man like him, I must adopt his traits, even the defects.
If I want to be a man, I have to sneeze.
Exactly.
And then Seth drops this absolute hammer of a quote. I have it right here.
Let's hear it.
Seth looks at Rob, well, Jane looks at Rob and says, now, you realize that virility is hardly synonymous with a runny nose.
It is Seth's dry wit at its absolute best. Virility is hardly synonymous with the runny nose.
It's so good.
But the underlying point is incredibly profound. Rob had associated these physical symptoms with being a man because his father, his primary male role model, had them.
He linked the two concepts together.
Seth is breaking that link. He's saying, you don't need this runny nose to prove you're a male. You don't need this weakness to establish your identity or your connection to your dad.
And he gets even more specific than just the psychology. He mentions environmental triggers. He says it's not just the pollen in the air. He talks about the color red and cod liver oil.
Which seems entirely random at first glance.
It seems completely random. Why would red make you sneeze?
But it's pure Pavlovian conditioning. Seth explains that the color red was heavily associated with Rob's mother, maybe a specific dress she wore all the time or the decor in the house when he was sick as a young child.
Right.
And the cod liver oil was something he was forced to take as a child right around the exact time the symptoms first started appearing.
So now we're talking 30, 40 years later. Rob sees red decorations at Christmas, or he tastes oil in a salad dressing, and his body just remembers.
His body runs the old script. It remembers the helplessness, the need for defense, the childhood environment, and boom, hay fever.
It's instantaneous.
The biology follows the psychology. The pollen is just the convenient excuse the mind uses to trigger the reaction it already wants to have.
It's like his body is a time machine, constantly dragging him back to 1920.
It is. And Seth's advice to Rob is to simply realize it consciously.
Bring it to the light?
He tells Rob to actively say, Father, I refuse to accept your hay fever. I throw it free.
I throw it free.
It's about conscious reprogramming. It's about looking at your symptom and asking, who does this actually belong to? Is this mine or is this an antique I picked up from my parents?
But it wasn't just Rob, though. Jane had her own struggles documented in this book. In session 324, she's dealing with intense apathy and physical stiffness.
She was really going through it.
She's feeling physically awful. It's hard for her to move. She's basically feeling paralyzed by this stiffness.
And again, Seth traces it back to a thought, specifically a resentment.
Always an emotion.
Always. Jane was angry at her publisher, a man named Fell. This was regarding her ESP book that was coming out. She felt he wasn't supporting the book enough, he wasn't doing enough PR. She felt entirely ignored by him.
But she didn't express that anger directly, right? Jane was a very polite, proper lady in many ways.
She definitely bottled it up. She wrote nice, cordial letters.
She was civilized about it.
She was civilized. And Seth calls the result ricocheted resentment.
Ricocheted resentment. That is such a powerful descriptive term.
It really is. She didn't want to hurt the publisher, so she held the fiery energy in. But energy has to go somewhere. You can't just press delete on an emotion.
It doesn't just vanish.
So it turned inward and attacked her own nervous system, causing the physical stiffness. She literally stiffened herself against the world because she was angry.
It's the body operating as a literal feedback mechanism. The stiffness in her physical joints was the physical manifestation of her stiff attitude toward the publisher.
Exactly. The body is completely literal. It's constantly telling you, hey, there is a blockage here. You are rigid here.
It's not a punishment from God.
No, it's a message system. It's your own energy saying, let this go, scream at the wall if you have to, but get this energy out of your joints.
So if you're listening to this right now and you have a nagging symptom, a recurring headache, a stiff back digestion issues, Seth would ask, what is the thought behind it?
What is the emotional charge you are clinging to?
And more importantly, are you using this symptom for something? Like Rob, using the hay fever for privacy.
Does the illness give you an excuse to stay in bed? To avoid a responsibility you hate? To get sympathy from your partner?
It's a really tough question to ask oneself, but it's necessary.
Oh, it's a confrontational question. The ego hates that question. Nobody wants to admit their illness is actually useful to them.
No, we want to be the victim of the illness.
Right. But the spirit knows the answer. And that's why diving into this material is so challenging. It demands absolute honesty with yourself.
Okay, let's zoom out. Let's zoom way out.
Yeah.
We've gone from envelopes to runny noses. Now let's talk about the structure of reality itself.
The big stuff.
Because there is a concept in session 303 that I think is one of the coolest, most sci-fi things in the whole book.
You must mean the seminars.
The seminar. I love this concept so much. So let's set the context for this one. Their friend, Jean Bernard, attends a seminar. Just a regular, everyday educational seminar in the physical world.
Right.
And he's talking to Seth about it during a session, and Seth just drops this massive bomb. He says the instructor of the seminar isn't just the person standing at the podium.
Right. Seth says that on a deeper, multidimensional level, the true instructor is actually a portion of Jean's own super self.
Super self.
Or what we might casually think of as a future self.
I love the quote here. Seth is talking to them, and he says, "You have not yet caught up with it, you see. You are slowpokes.
Slowpokes. It's so charming and condescending at the same time, but the implication of it is staggering. It relies entirely on Seth's concept of the spacious present.
We need to explain that. The spacious present.
Yeah.
Because we are so used to linear time.
Yeah.
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
We're trapped in it.
If I miss Monday, I can't go back. The past is gone.
We think of time as a line drawn on a page or a river flowing in one direction, past, present, future.
Unidirectional.
Seth says that is a complete illusion created by our physical senses, simply to help us focus on physical reality without getting overwhelmed.
It's a filtering mechanism.
Yes. In reality, everything is happening all at once. All your past selves and all your future selves exist right now simultaneously.
It's hard to visualize.
Think of it like a DVD. The whole movie is pressed onto the disc at once. The beginning, the middle, and the end are all physically there at the exact same time.
Right.
You just watch it scene by scene because of how the player works. But the end of the movie exists while you are watching the opening credits.
So applying that to Gene, my future self, who has already learned the painful lessons I'm struggling with today, is actually accessible to me right now. He's further along on the disc.
Yes. That's the super self. Seth is suggesting that in this seminar of life, we are actually teaching ourselves.
We're our own gurus.
The you that is more evolved, further along the track, is reaching back or reaching across the tracks of the DVD to guide the you that is sitting here today listening to this.
That makes me feel so much better, honestly. It means I'm not just flailing around in the dark making random mistakes. There is a part of me that actually knows what's going on.
And Seth emphasizes that separation is an illusion. The ego thinks it's all alone in this little bag of skin.
Isolated.
But the true self is massive. It's multidimensional. You are constantly drawing on knowledge from these other portions of your identity.
We just don't recognize it.
We just filter it out because we're so focused on paying the rent on Monday. You think it's just a random intuition or a hunch, but it might literally be your future self yelling at you to take a different path.
This naturally leads into the big theological question in the material. If we are these vast, multidimensional beings teaching ourselves from the future, what about God? Where does the big guy fit into all of this? This comes up in session 311.
And this is a delicate topic for some listeners, surely, but Seth is very direct about it. He says the conventional personified God, you know, the old man with the white beard sitting on a throne, checking a list of who is naughty and nice.
The Sunday school version.
Right. He says that is a symbol. It's a story we tell ourselves to make the overwhelming concept of creation manageable for the human mind.
A symbol. Okay, so he's not a guy in the clouds pulling levers.
No. Seth says there is no personal God individual in the way humanity usually thinks of it. However, and this is a really big theory, he does not say there is no God.
Right, he doesn't say it's just an empty universe. He talks about all that is.
All that is. It's a term that implies total, absolute inclusivity. It's everything that exists seen and unseen.
Right.
And he says that a portion of all that is focused directly on every single individual.
So it's not that God is distant and judging you from a cloud out in space. It's that the creative force of the entire universe is literally woven into the fabric of your consciousness.
It's entirely inside. It's intrinsic.
And then he says something about the nature of creation that I find incredibly beautiful. I want to read the exact quote.
Go for it.
Seth says, when realization is reached at the highest level, then all that is instantly creates new realities. And to some extent, you see, loses the conscious knowledge of its own identity.
It's profound.
Whoa. Let's really unpack that.
Yeah.
Loses the conscious knowledge of its own identity. That sounds almost risky. Why would the creator of the universe do that?
It implies that creation isn't just making a clay pot and putting it on a shelf. It's an act of giving away the self.
Diluting itself.
Not diluting, but investing. The creator puts so much of its own essence into the creation, into us, that it actually becomes us.
Oh, wow.
It explores new probabilities and new realities through us. It's not pulling the strings from above. It's living the messy experience from the inside out.
We're the frontier of God's experience.
Exactly. God becomes the flower. God becomes the person. God becomes the struggle and the triumph.
That completely reframes the entire purpose of life. It means we aren't just lowly subjects waiting to be judged at the end of a test. We are active participants. We are the eyes and ears of all that is.
We are the precise mechanism by which the universe knows itself. And because of that, we have absolute free will.
We have to.
We aren't puppets on a string. If God controlled every single move we made, God wouldn't learn anything new. We are the explorers sent out into the unknown.
Switching gears a bit here, because Seth is nothing if not practical. We have all this incredibly high-level philosophy about God and time, but Seth also does some very specific demonstrations in this book.
Oh, he definitely likes to show off a little bit.
He does. Practical magic, I call it. Projections. This is session 329 and 330. This is the story of Pat Norelli's class.
Yes.
This feels like remote viewing before remote viewing was even a cool term used by the CIA.
It really does. This is a fantastic validation case for them. Pat Norelli was a teacher up in Boston. Jane is sitting in Elmira, New York.
Which is hundreds of miles away.
Hundreds of miles away. During a regular session, Jane goes into a very deep trance. And Seth announces that she is going to project her consciousness directly to Pat's classroom in Boston in real time.
And she does. She's physically sitting in her living room in Elmira, speaking into Rob's microphone. But she starts describing the layout of a room in Boston she's never physically seen.
She describes the students in the room. She describes the physical space, the windows, the desks. She describes exactly where specific people are sitting at that exact moment.
And later, all of this was validated by Pat. She was startlingly accurate.
Highly accurate.
So what does Seth say is actually happening there? Is Jane leaving her physical body behind? Is she like a ghost flying down the highway to Massachusetts?
Not exactly flying down the highway. Seth explains that consciousness isn't locked inside the physical skull to begin with. We project constantly.
We do.
Yes, we do it in our dreams every single night. But we usually forget by morning. We travel, we visit other locations and other realities.
So what was different here?
The only difference here was that Jane, with Seth's assistance, was able to do it while her physical body was awake and vocalizing. And crucially, she brought the conscious memory back immediately.
It really changes your definition of being here. I mean, I might be here holding this microphone in this room, but a part of my consciousness could be checking in on a friend in London or visiting my childhood home.
You might very well be. And if that friend suddenly thinks of you out of the blue, they might actually be picking up on that projection. Have you ever had that happen? You think of someone and 5 seconds later they call you.
Oh, all the time. It's uncanny.
Seth would say that is absolutely not a coincidence. You projected to them or they projected to you. And the phone call was just the physical 3D confirmation of a meeting that had already happened in the electromagnetic reality.
There was another experiment in session 302 that I found fascinating regarding this idea of reading reality. It's the Feinberg law object.
Ah, yes. Back to the envelopes. Rob was relentless with these tests. He really, really wanted to stump Seth.
So Rob puts in a newspaper clipping about the Feinberg law. Now, our context, just a little historical background. This was a law regarding subversive teachers. It was a very political, very dry, legalistic piece of text.
Right. Not exactly a passionate love poem this time.
No. And you'd expect a clairvoyant, if they were just reading the paper, to maybe read the headline, Feinberg Law, or maybe see an image of a gavel or a schoolhouse.
But Seth doesn't do that at all. What does he pick up from the envelope?
He picks up the underlying concepts. He says civil rights, he says constitution, and then he says something ill-defined or inept.
Inept. Seth is a political critic.
He is. He has opinions.
But again, look at what he's doing here. This is crucial. He isn't reading the ink on the clipping. He is reading the concept behind the ink.
He's reading the aura of the law itself.
Yes. He's reading the collective thought forms attached to that specific legislation. The controversy, the legal arguments, the strong feelings of the people involved who thought the law was inept or unjust.
And just to be clear for our listeners, we aren't taking any political sides here on the Feinberg Law.
No, not at all.
We are just neutrally reporting what the source material says Seth picked up from the envelope. He picked up the emotional resonance of the debate surrounding it.
Exactly. It reinforces that core idea that thoughts are real things. Concepts have actual weight. Even a dry, boring legal document is absolutely buzzing with the emotions of the people who wrote it and the people who fought against it.
They have texture. They have reality in a different dimension. And Seth perceives that conceptual texture as easily as we perceive the color of a painted wall.
And Seth applies this incredibly practical insight to real people's lives, too. We have to mention Philip.
Yes, John Bradley. Seth refers to him as Philip in the sessions.
Seth gives him straight-up career counseling, which is amazing.
I mean, if I could ask a highly evolved, multi-dimensional entity for career advice, I absolutely would. Seth, should I invest in this startup?
I wonder what Seth would say about the stock market. But in Book 7, Seth is surprisingly specific with John. He predicts job offers coming his way. He tells him he's going to travel to the Southwest for work.
But most importantly, He advises him strongly against running for county commissioner,
Don't run for office, John. Just don't do it.
basically. He predicted it would be a financial loss and a massive waste of his time and energy.
And he was right. John didn't run. Or when he looked into it, it proved to be a bad idea. It shows that Seth isn't just some abstract philosopher sitting on a mountaintop spouting poetry.
He's looking at the math.
He's looking at the probabilities. He sees where John's energy is naturally heading. He sees the dense energy of that specific election, and he simply says, that path is blocked. Or that path over there is open and flowing.
It's practical magic. It's using that broader perspective, that super self perspective we talked about, to navigate the mundane day-to-day traffic of life.
And that connects back beautifully to everything we discussed today, whether it's reading a sealed envelope with a poem in it, curing Rob's hay fever, or deciding on a job transition. It's all about reading the underlying energy.
Seeing past the surface.
It's about understanding that the physical world is just the very thin surface of reality. The real action is happening underneath, in the thoughts, the emotions, the hidden beliefs.
It's a lot to take in. It really shifts the ultimate responsibility right back onto us.
It does. It means you have vastly more control over your experience than you think you do. But the flip side is, it also means you have total responsibility.
You can't blame the pollen count.
You can't blame the pollen. You can't blame the annoying neighbors for your bad mood. You have to look at what you are actively projecting into your reality.
True. If my thoughts are literally creating electromagnetic realities, I should probably watch what I'm thinking about all day.
You should. But, and Seth is very clear about this, not in a fearful way, don't become hyper-paranoid about every stray negative thought you have.
Right. Don't stress over it.
Do it in a joyful, creative way. Play with it. Be an intentional artist with your thoughts.
Let's recap the big takeaways from Book 7 before we wrap this up. We covered a lot of ground today.
We really did. Okay, first, thoughts are actions. They are mental enzymes. They actively change the chemistry of your body and the physical environment around you.
Second point, health is a direct reflection of your beliefs. Your runny nose might be a psychological symbol. Your physical stiffness might be an unexpressed grudge. Your body is talking to you constantly. Listen to it.
And third, you are a multidimensional being. You have a super self. You are currently part of a massive seminar where you are both the student struggling at the desk and the teacher at the podium. Time is spacious.
And finally, consciousness travels. You aren't trapped inside your skull. You are vast.
That is a pretty solid summary of a very complex book.
I think so too. But look, we have honestly only scratched the surface here. This is a deep dive, yes, but Book 7 is incredibly dense. There are hundreds of pages of notes, experiments, and mind-bending theories we didn't even get to touch.
It is a treasure trove. And we always have to say this. This podcast was just a glimpse. You need to read the source material for yourself.
You have to see Rob's footnotes.
Absolutely. Go to the source. You can find these books at sethcenter.com. Specifically, check out sethcenter.com/the early sessions.
And we want to officially credit the Seth Material and the publisher's New Awareness Network for all of this.
Yes. They are doing the vital work of keeping this material available to the public. Support them. Read the books. Rob's detailed notes alone are worth the price of admission.
Seeing his struggle, his skepticism, and his eventual validation, it really grounds the whole wild experience.
They really are. Rob's notes are the anchor of the whole thing.
Well, before we go, I know you want to leave the listener with a final thought to mull over.
I do. We talked a lot about the seminar today. The idea that your future self, your fully realized super self, is actively teaching you right now in this moment. So as you go about the rest of your day, if you stopped for just a second, if you quieted down the noise in your head, what is that future self trying to tell you right now?
That's powerful.
What is the specific lesson of this exact moment in your life?
That is a very good question. Maybe the traffic jam you're stuck in isn't just a traffic jam. Maybe the annoyance at your coworker isn't just annoyance.
Exactly. Maybe it's the curriculum.
Wow. I'm going to be thinking about that all week.
Me too.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. It has been quite a trip.
Always a pleasure to unpack this stuff.
Until next time, keep creating your reality.
And pay attention to your envelopes.
Take care, everyone.